bell above the bakery door chimed like a judgment, announcing their arrival to a world that had long since decided people like them didn't belong. Kimberly Watkins felt it the moment they stepped inside. The shift in atmosphere, the way conversations paused mid-sentence, how eyes flickered toward them and then quickly away. The bakery gleamed with the kind of perfection that only money could buy. Brass fixtures caught the afternoon sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting golden light across marble counters as spotless as fresh snow. Artisan pastries sat beneath glass domes like precious jewels in a museum, each one a small work of art that cost more than Kimberly made in a day of cleaning office buildings. The scent of butter and vanilla hung thick in the air, mixing with the aroma of fresh-baked croissants and chocolate ganache. Soft jazz played from hidden speakers, the kind of music that whispered wealth and sophistication. The polished chrome of the display cases reflected everything, including Kimberly's threadbare work jacket with its fraying cuffs and the dark circles under her eyes that no amount of concealer could hide anymore. She felt Gemma's small hand tighten in hers. Her daughter stood beside her in a pink dress that had been too small for months now, the fabric faded from countless washes in laundromat machines. But Gemma's eyes were bright with wonder as she stared at the cakes arranged like a rainbow behind the glass. Chocolate towers with gold leaf, vanilla creations adorned with fresh berries, lemon tarts that gleamed like sunshine. "Mama," Gemma whispered, her 6-year-old voice hushed with reverence. "They're so pretty." Kimberly's throat tightened. She reached into her jacket pocket, fingers finding the 3 crumpled dollar bills she'd been saving for weeks. $3. The cheapest pastry in this place probably cost 10. Pride warred with desperation in her chest, the same battle she fought every single day. She could turn around right now, walk out with her dignity intact. Gemma would understand. She always understood, which somehow made it worse. But it was Gemma's birthday, 6 years old today, and she'd never had a real birthday cake. Not once. Kimberly approached the counter, her heart hammering. A young woman in a crisp white uniform stood there, blonde hair pulled back in a perfect bun, manicured nails resting on the register. Behind her, more staff members arranged pastries with practiced precision, their movements choreographed like a ballet. "Excuse me?" Kimberly said, her voice barely above a whisper. She leaned forward, trying to keep the question private. "Do you maybe have any expired cakes? Something from yesterday, perhaps. Just something small. It's my daughter's birthday today." The cashier's face changed. Not dramatically, just a subtle shift, a tightening around the eyes, a curl at the corner of her mouth. When she spoke, her voice was loud enough to carry across the bakery, each word enunciated with barely concealed disgust. "We donate our day-olds to shelters. Perhaps you should try there." The words landed like slaps. Around them, Kimberly felt rather than saw the reactions. Well-dressed patrons exchanged knowing looks. A woman in designer sunglasses pulled her own daughter closer, as if poverty were contagious, as if struggle could leap across the space between them and infect her child. Whispered comments drifted through the jazz music. "Can you believe?" In a place like this, should have known better. Gemma's hand went slack in hers. Kimberly looked down and saw her daughter's face, saw the exact moment the excitement drained away, replaced by understanding. At 6 years old, Gemma already knew what it meant to be unwanted. She was watching her mother's shoulders hunch, seeing the way Kimberly couldn't meet anyone's eyes, and learning the bitter lesson that some people simply didn't matter to the world. What Kimberly didn't see was the man in the corner booth. Milo Harrison sat with his back to the wall. He always sat with his back to the wall, wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. His tattooed knuckles were wrapped around an espresso cup so delicate it looked like it might shatter in his grip. Across from him, two men in leather jackets leaned forward, discussing numbers and territories and logistics that would have interested various law enforcement agencies. The conversation stopped mid-sentence. Milo's attention had shifted to the counter, to the woman in the worn jacket and the little girl in the too small pink dress. He saw the cashier's curled lip. He heard every word, clear as gunfire on a quiet night. And he saw something else, something in the way the mother held herself, in the protective angle of her body toward her daughter, in the desperate love evident in every line of her posture. For a moment, unbidden and unwelcome, another face flashed through his mind. Emma. His Emma, small and pale in a hospital bed, tubes running from her thin arms, looking up at him with trust he couldn't justify. 15 years ago. A different lifetime. When he was just a dock worker who couldn't afford the treatments that might have saved his daughter's life. Boss? One of his associates leaned forward, concerned. You good? Milo didn't answer. He was watching the mother whisper something to her daughter, watching them turn toward the door. The little girl's face was crumpling, trying so hard not to cry, and her small voice carried across the suddenly quiet bakery. Mama, why don't they like us? Something broke inside Milo's chest. Something that had been frozen for 15 years suddenly cracked, wide open. His chair scraped across the floor, a harsh sound that made everyone in the bakery freeze. His associates exchanged glances, recognizing the shift in their boss's demeanor, the dangerous set of his shoulders. They'd seen this look before, usually right before someone ended up in a hospital. Or worse. Milo stood slowly, his 6'3" frame unfolding from the booth. His shadow fell across Kimberly and Gemma as he approached, and when the mother turned to look at him, he saw fear flash across her face. She recognized him. Most people in this city did. You didn't run half the underground operations in the metropolitan area without becoming famous or infamous. But Milo kept his voice soft, his movements careful, as if approaching a wounded animal that might bolt. "Excuse me, miss," he said quietly. "I couldn't help but overhear." Kimberly's heart stopped. She knew that face, had seen it on the news, in newspapers, whispered about in the shelters where she and Gemma sometimes slept. Milo Harrison. The name alone made hardened men go quiet. She instinctively moved in front of Gemma, her body becoming a shield, words tumbling out in a panic. "I'm sorry. We didn't mean to cause any trouble. We're leaving right now. Please, we just—" The entire bakery held its breath. The staff had gone rigid behind the counter. Customers sat frozen with coffee cups halfway to their lips. Even the jazz seemed to fade into nothing. Everyone was waiting for the explosion, for the violence that men like Milo Harrison were known for. But Milo did something no one expected. He knelt down, slowly, carefully, lowering himself until he was at Gemma's eye level. His expensive suit creased against the bakery floor. His voice, when he spoke, was so gentle it seemed to belong to a different person entirely. "Hey there. What's your name, sweetheart?" Gemma peered out from behind her mother's legs, curiosity winning over caution the way it always did with children. "Gemma. That's a beautiful name. I heard it's your birthday today. Is that true?" Gemma nodded, her small fingers clutching her mother's hand. "I'm 6. Mama promised we'd get something special. The cashier suddenly found her voice, stumbling over words as she tried to undo her earlier cruelty. Sir, I didn't realize. We can certainly find something for the little girl. Milo silenced her with a single look. Not angry, just absolute. The kind of look that made it clear when someone was done talking. He turned back to Gemma, and his voice remained soft. 6 years old. That's pretty important. You know what I think? I think you should pick out any cake you want in this whole bakery, any one at all. Gemma's eyes went wide. She looked up at her mother for permission, and Kimberly felt paralyzed, unable to process what was happening. This man, this dangerous man, was being kind. Genuinely kind. That one, Gemma whispered, pointing to an elaborate 3-tier creation, decorated with fresh strawberries and delicate gold leaf. It was easily the most expensive cake in the display, the kind of thing meant for weddings or milestone anniversaries. Then, quickly, as if catching herself in greediness, she added, "But just a small piece is okay. Just a small piece is okay." Something cracked in Milo's controlled exterior. His jaw tightened. His eyes closed for just a moment, and when they opened, there was a rawness there that made Kimberly's breath catch. He stood, turning to the cashier with absolute authority. "I want that entire cake, and I want 6 candles on it. Can you do that?" "Yes, sir. Of course, sir. Right away." Milo pulled out a leather wallet, the kind that screamed money and power. He placed 3 crisp $100 bills on the marble counter. The cashier stared at them like they might burn her fingers. Kimberly found her voice. "We can't accept this. We don't even know you. This is too much." "When's the last time you had a real meal?" Milo asked, turning to face her fully. His eyes were sharp, assessing, but not cruel. "When did you last sleep without worrying about tomorrow?" The questions landed like physical blows because they were so precisely aimed. Kimberly felt tears burning behind her eyes. "I have a proposition for you," Milo continued. "I own several restaurants in this city, legitimate businesses. My flagship location needs a manager, someone smart, someone who understands what it means to fight for what matters. The position pays triple whatever you're making now, housing included." Kimberly's mind reeled. "Why would you do this? What do you want from us?" "Because everyone deserves to feel important on their birthday," Milo said quietly. "Especially little girls who ask for small pieces when they deserve the whole cake." He paused, and something ancient and painful moved across his face. "I had a daughter once. Her 6th birthday was the last one we celebrated together." The words hung in the air. Behind Milo, his 2 associates shifted uncomfortably in the corner booth. They'd worked for this man for years, seen him do terrible things without flinching, and now they were watching something they'd never witnessed before. Their boss showing his scars. Milo pulled a business card from his wallet and a pen from his jacket. He wrote an address on the back and pressed it into Kimberly's trembling hand. "The restaurant, Emma's table. Come by tomorrow morning at 9. If you don't show up, I'll understand. But if you do, I promise you'll never have to beg for expired cake again." Gemma tugged on Milo's sleeve. When he looked down, she asked with the pure innocence only children possess, "Are you an angel, mister? Mama says angels help people who need it most." Milo's composure nearly shattered. He crouched down again, and his voice was rough with barely contained emotion. "No, sweetheart, I'm not an angel, but maybe helping you will make me something better than what I am." Across the bakery, unnoticed by everyone. A woman in plain clothes and thick-framed glasses watched the entire scene unfold. Detective Sarah Chen had been tailing Milo Harrison for 3 years, waiting for the mistake that would finally let her build a case against him. She'd been sitting at her corner table for 40 minutes, pretending to read a magazine, monitoring what she thought was just another routine meeting with his lieutenants. This was different. This was personal. And personal meant vulnerable. Chen watched Milo hand over the business card, saw the desperate hope blooming on the mother's face, noted the address he'd written down. Her mind was already working, already calculating how to use this. For 3 years, she'd gotten nowhere. Milo was too careful, too insulated. But this woman, Kimberly Watkins, she'd find out her name easily enough. She would be different. She was desperate. Desperate people could be persuaded. Chen left money on her table and slipped out while the staff was boxing up the elaborate cake. In her car, she pulled out her phone and opened a new note. She typed quickly, Kimberly Watkins, 6-year-old daughter, desperate enough to accept help from a monster. Perfect. Tomorrow, she'd make contact. Before the woman got too comfortable in Milo's world, before gratitude turned into loyalty. Tomorrow, everything would change. Okay, pause for a second. Milo just handed Kimberly everything she's ever needed, but Detective Chen is ready to burn it all down to get her revenge. This is about to get messy. Quick question. Would you take help from a dangerous person to save your kid? Yes or no? Comment below. And hey, if you're hooked on this story, which I know you are, smash that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Also, drop your location in the comments. I want to see where in the world you're watching from. All right, back to the story. Things are about to get intense. Kimberly stood on the sidewalk outside Emma's table, Gemma's small hand warm in hers, and tried to convince herself to walk away. The morning sun caught the restaurant's windows, making them gleam like promises she couldn't afford to believe in. Behind her, the bus that had brought them here pulled away with a hydraulic sigh, taking with it her last easy escape. "Mama, is this it?" Gemma asked, pressing her nose against the glass door. "It's so pretty." Pretty didn't begin to cover it. The restaurant was upscale without being intimidating. Warm brick and dark wood, white tablecloths visible through the windows, fresh flowers in every vase. And there, etched into the glass door in elegant script, Emma's table. Emma, the daughter Milo had lost. The 6th birthday that had been their last. Before Kimberly could change her mind, the door opened from inside. A woman in her 50s stood there, her face creased with smile lines, silver streaking through her dark hair. She wore a simple black dress and an expression of genuine warmth. "You must be Kimberly." "I'm Maria, Mr. Harrison's assistant. We've been expecting you." She crouched down to Gemma's level. "And you must be the birthday girl. Mr. Harrison told me all about you." The tour felt surreal. Maria led them through the kitchen, where chefs were already prepping for lunch, service, past the dining room with its soft lighting and carefully curated art, into an office with a desk and filing cabinets, and a window overlooking the street. "Your office," Maria said simply, "if you decide to stay." The staff they met was unlike any restaurant crew Kimberly had ever encountered. A sous chef with prison tattoos crawling up his neck, a server with scars across her knuckles and a guarded way of moving, a dishwasher who couldn't have been more than 25, but had eyes that had seen too much. Each one greeted them with respect, with recognition. These were people who understood what it meant to need a second chance. Mr. Harrison believes everyone deserves an opportunity to rebuild, Maria explained as they climbed the stairs to the apartment above. Most of our staff have complicated histories. He gives them work, dignity, a path forward. The apartment took Kimberly's breath away. 2 bedrooms, a real kitchen with appliances that actually worked, a living room with furniture that didn't smell like mildew and desperation. Sunlight poured through windows that overlooked a small park where children were already playing on swings. Gemma didn't wait for permission. She took off running, her delighted squeals echoing through rooms that had been empty just days ago. "Mama! Mama, come look! I have my own room!" Kimberly followed on shaking legs. Gemma's bedroom had a real bed with a pink comforter, bookshelves already lined with children's books, toys arranged on shelves, a dollhouse, stuffed animals, art supplies. Everything a 6-year-old could want. The tears came before Kimberly could stop them. He'd prepared this. Before meeting them in the bakery, before knowing their names, Milo Harrison had furnished this apartment and stocked it with everything a child might need. He'd been planning this gesture, waiting for the right person. Mr. Harrison has been looking for the right person to manage Emma's table for months, Maria said softly, appearing in the doorway. He wants someone who understands what it means to struggle, to fight for your child. Someone who knows what poverty looks like and refuses to judge it. Kimberly wiped her eyes. 3 years ago, she'd had a law degree and a future. Then her ex-husband's embezzlement scheme had collapsed, and he'd looked at her with those calculating eyes and said, "One of us is going to prison. It should be you. You're stronger. You'll survive it. And Gemma needs at least one parent free." She'd taken the fall because the alternative was letting him raise their daughter alone, and she'd seen enough of his cruelty to know how that would end. The legitimate legal system had destroyed her. Maybe Milo's world wasn't so different, just more honest about its violence. "We'll stay," Kimberly said finally, "for Gemma. But I need to understand exactly what I'm getting into." That afternoon, while Gemma explored the park below with Maria watching from the window, someone knocked on the apartment door. A woman in business casual stood there, clipboard in hand, official-looking badge clipped to her belt. "Kimberly Watkins? I'm here for a routine health inspection of the restaurant. Just need to ask you a few questions, since you're the new manager." They talked in the kitchen. The woman, she'd introduced herself as Sarah Chen, asking questions about food safety and business licenses. Then, casually, she closed her notebook. "Actually, Mrs. Watkins, I should be honest with you. I'm Detective Sarah Chen, and you need to know who Milo Harrison really is." Kimberly's blood went cold. Chen laid it out methodically. The territorial wars, the bodies that had piled up during Milo's rise to power, the legitimate businesses that were really fronts for money laundering, the violence that lurked beneath every expensive suit and kind gesture. "Your daughter deserves better than being raised around a crime lord," Chen said, her voice sharp with conviction. "Unless you help me build a case against him, I'll have to inform Child Protective Services about Gemma's living situation." "You can't." "I can, and I will." Chen placed a small recording device on the counter, along with a business card. "Wear this wire. Record his conversations. Help me put him away, and I'll make sure you keep Gemma. Refuse, and I'll have her in foster care by Friday." The detective left, and Kimberly stood alone in her new kitchen, staring at the wire like it was a snake. When Gemma returned, she found her mother sitting at the table, staring at nothing. "Mama, why do you look sad? Don't you like our new home?" Kimberly forced a smile. "Just tired, baby," Let's make dinner in our new kitchen." That evening, Milo came by with Chinese takeout, the containers still warm. He sat on the floor with Gemma, telling her stories about the restaurant, about the chef who made the best chocolate cake in the city, about the server who could juggle 3 plates at once. His laughter was real, unguarded in a way Kimberly suspected most people never saw. She studied him, this man who Chen had painted as a monster, but all she saw was someone carrying grief so profound it had reshaped his entire life. "Tell me about Emma," Kimberly said quietly. "Your daughter." Milo's walls came down. He described a little girl who loved butterflies, who wanted to be a veterinarian, who fought leukemia with a bravery that shamed every adult around her. He talked about the experimental treatments he couldn't afford, the insurance that wouldn't cover them, watching his daughter fade while he was powerless to stop it. "Everything I built after she died was because I swore no parent should ever be as powerless as I was," he said, his voice raw. "The restaurants, the legitimate businesses, they're all named for her. They're my way of making something good from something terrible." After he left, Kimberly retrieved the wire from her purse. She turned it over in her hands, thinking about Chen's vendetta, about Milo's grief, about the systems that destroyed people and the people who tried to rebuild from the ruins. Gemma slept peacefully in her new bed, finally safe, finally comfortable. But as she watched Milo leave, his shoulders heavy with 15 years of grief, Kimberly wondered if maybe the real monster wasn't the man trying to change, but the detective willing to destroy an innocent child to catch him. 2 weeks had passed since Kimberly walked through the doors of Emma's table, and against every expectation she'd carried from a life of survival, she was thriving. The restaurant hummed with the kind of energy that came from people who genuinely cared about their work. Kimberly discovered she had a natural talent for management, organizing schedules, mediating conflicts between the kitchen and front-of-house staff, finding the balance between efficiency and compassion. The staff respected her not despite her past, but because of it. She understood what it meant to fight for every small victory. Gemma was enrolled in Lincoln Elementary, 6 blocks away. She came home every afternoon with stories about her new friends, about the art teacher who let her use the good markers, about the library that had so many books she'd never read them all. For the first time in her short life, Gemma laughed without that edge of uncertainty, without looking over her shoulder to see if happiness was about to be snatched away. Small moments of normalcy became precious. Gemma doing her homework at the restaurant counter, while the dinner rush swirled around her. The pastry chef teaching her how to frost cupcakes with steady hands and infinite patience. The way the entire staff had adopted her as their unofficial mascot, each person determined to protect the innocence they'd lost in their own childhoods. Milo visited regularly, never empty-handed. Books for Gemma. Chapter books now, because she was reading above her grade level. Art supplies that came in professional sets. A small telescope when she mentioned wanting to see the stars. He'd sit with Kimberly over coffee, their conversations growing deeper, moving beyond surface pleasantries into territory that felt dangerous for its intimacy. And through it all, Kimberly wore Detective Chen's wire. She hated herself for it, hated the weight of the device taped beneath her shirt, the betrayal it represented. But she listened to every conversation, every story Milo shared about expanding the restaurant chain, about hiring more people who needed second chances, about the commercial bakery he wanted to open in Emma's name. Never once did he discuss criminal operations. Never once did his associates talk business around her. Chen was growing impatient. They met in parking lots and quiet coffee shops, and each time the detective's frustration was more palpable. "I need something I can use," Chen insisted during their last meeting. "Get him to talk about his operations, his associates, his money laundering." "He doesn't discuss that around me," Kimberly said. "Maybe because there's nothing to discuss." "Then make him talk. Ask questions. Push harder." Chen's eyes were cold. "Or I start the process to remove Gemma. Your choice." 3 days later, Marcus Webb walked into Emma's table. He was everything Milo wasn't. Smooth where Milo was direct. Performance where Milo was substance. His suit was Italian, his smile calculated, his handshake lingering just a fraction too long. "You must be the famous Kimberly," he said. "I'm Marcus Webb, an old friend of Milo's. Thought I'd stop by and reconnect." The restaurant changed around him. Staff members found reasons to be elsewhere. Maria's warm demeanor turned to ice. Even the air seemed to thicken with tension. Marcus made a point of meeting Gemma when she arrived from school. He was overly friendly, crouching down with that too bright smile, producing an expensive designer doll from his briefcase, like a magician pulling rabbits from hats. "Every little princess needs a proper toy," he said. Kimberly's instincts screamed warnings. There was something predatory in the way he watched Gemma, something calculating in his generosity. When he finally left, she turned to Maria. "Keep Gemma away from that man," Maria said before Kimberly could ask. "He and Mr. Harrison have history. Bad history." Milo arrived that evening, and his fury was barely contained. His jaw was tight, his movements sharp. "Did Marcus Webb come here?" "Who is he?" Kimberly demanded. "Why did your people look terrified?" The story came out in harsh bursts. Marcus had been his partner 15 years ago, had helped him build the empire when Milo was young and angry, and drowning in grief over Emma's death. But Marcus had wanted to expand into drugs, into trafficking, things that crossed lines even Milo, in his rage and pain, had refused to cross. "When I started going legitimate 5 years ago, Marcus saw it as betrayal," Milo said, pacing the length of the office. "He's been trying to take over my territory ever since. And now, I've been working with federal prosecutors, trading information for immunity. In 6 months, my old life ends completely, and I can focus on building something Emma would have been proud of." He stopped, looking directly at her. "But Marcus finding out about you and Gemma, that's dangerous. He'll use you to get to me." Kimberly made a decision. She couldn't keep deceiving someone who was showing her more honesty than anyone in the legitimate world ever had. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice barely steady. "Detective Chen approached me. She's been making me wear a wire." Milo's expression didn't change. "I know. I've known since the first day." "You knew?" Shock made her voice rise. "Then why?" "Because I'm not doing anything wrong anymore. Let Chen listen. She'll hear a man running restaurants and trying to be better. That's all there is to hear." He sat down heavily, suddenly looking older than his years. "Chen's brother died in a shootout 10 years ago. One of my operations. She has every right to hate me. I hate myself for it. But I can't undo the past. I can try to make sure no one else suffers because of my choices. That includes you and Gemma." Kimberly found herself confessing her own history. The law degree she'd earned through night school and determination. The conviction that had stripped away her license when she took the fall for her ex-husband's crimes to protect Gemma from his manipulation and violence. The way the system had chewed her up and spit her out with the same casual cruelty she'd experienced her entire life. "We're the same," Milo said quietly. two people trying to escape pasts that won't let us go. I'm done wearing the wire, Kimberly decided. Whatever happens, I'm choosing to trust you. Across the city, Marcus Webb sat in his office, phone pressed to his ear, speaking to someone who owed him the kind of favors that couldn't be refused. I need you to file an emergency complaint. Anonymous concerned citizen reporting child endangerment. The mother's living with a known criminal. The voice on the other end, a CPS caseworker whose gambling debts Marcus had strategically acquired, hesitated only briefly. How fast? Make it official. I want a custody hearing within 48 hours, and make sure Judge Patterson is assigned. He owes me enough favors to fill a courtroom. Marcus's plan was elegant in its cruelty. Force Milo to choose between protecting Kimberly and Gemma, or protecting his immunity deal with the FBI. Make him watch helplessly as another little girl disappeared from his life, just like Emma had 15 years ago. Let's see how tough the great Milo Harrison is, Marcus said, when history repeats itself. At Emma's table, Kimberly and Milo talked late into the evening, unaware of the legal trap being set for them. Upstairs, Gemma slept peacefully, Marcus's expensive doll clutched in her arms, a Trojan horse of innocence, hiding malicious intent. The calm before the storm felt like safety, but it was just the held breath before everything shattered. The next morning, an official envelope was slipped under the restaurant's door. Family court, emergency custody hearing, 48 hours notice. Everything was about to fall apart. Kimberly found the envelope at dawn, slipped under the restaurant door like a death sentence. Her hands shook as she read the words, emergency custody hearing, child endangerment due to mother's association with known criminal elements. 48 hours. The terror was immediate and absolute. Everything they'd built in 2 weeks, Gemma's laughter, her new friends, the security of a real home, was about to be ripped away by bureaucratic violence dressed up as concern. Milo arrived within minutes of her frantic call, still wearing yesterday's clothes, fury radiating from every line of his body. He read the complaint once, then crumpled it in his fist. Marcus. This is exactly his style, using the system as a weapon. What do we do? Kimberly's voice cracked. I can't lose her. I have lawyers, the best. They'll represent you. But when Milo made the calls, the answer was the same from every firm. Conflict of interest. Marcus had been thorough, poisoning every well before they even knew they were thirsty. Detective Chen appeared at the restaurant that afternoon, and for once, there was something almost sympathetic in her expression. I heard about the hearing, she said. This doesn't have to happen, Kimberly. Testify against Milo. Give me what I need to arrest him. I'll withdraw my statement to CPS. Gemma stays with you. The impossible choice crystallized in that moment. Betray the man who'd saved them, or risk losing her daughter to a system that had already failed them both once before. He's a criminal, Kimberly. He's killed people. His kindness to you doesn't erase that. But your vendetta doesn't justify destroying my family either, Kimberly shot back, something fierce and lawyerly rising in her voice. Chen's expression hardened. You have until the hearing. Decide what matters more, protecting a gangster or protecting your daughter. Alone in the apartment after Chen left, Kimberly paced like a caged animal. But beneath the panic, her legal mind was working, analyzing the case with the clarity that had once made her good at her profession. The anonymous complaint, the rushed 48-hour timeline, Judge Patterson specifically assigned. She pulled out her laptop and started digging, finding connections between Patterson and Webb's construction companies, documented complaints about the judge's ethical violations, campaign contributions that looked suspiciously like bribes. This wasn't about Gemma's safety. This was Marcus Webb setting a trap, and everyone, Chen, the judge, the system itself, was playing their part. If Marcus wanted to use the system as a weapon, Kimberly would turn it back on him. The courtroom was sterile and cold, all harsh fluorescent lighting and institutional beige. Gemma sat with a social worker, confused and scared, clutching her doll. Kimberly wanted to scoop her up and run, but she forced herself to focus. Judge Patterson's bias was obvious from his first words, cutting off Kimberly's attempts to speak, deferring instead to Detective Chen's testimony. Chen took the stand and methodically detailed Milo's history, the territorial wars, the violence, the danger to any child in his proximity. She was thorough, professional, devastating. Kimberly stood to cross-examine, no lawyer beside her, just her knowledge and desperate love for her daughter. Detective Chen, you lost your brother 10 years ago, didn't you? In a shooting connected to Mr. Harrison's operations. Chen's jaw tightened. Yes. So this isn't really about child safety. It's personal vengeance. Objection, Patterson banged his gavel. That line of questioning is irrelevant. But Kimberly had planted the seed. She called her next witness. I'd like to call Marcus Webb to the stand. The courtroom went silent. Marcus, sitting in the back row with his smug expression, looked genuinely shocked. When he took the stand, his denials were smooth, practiced, but Kimberly had spent 3 years studying how to read liars. She presented the evidence she'd gathered, phone records showing calls between Marcus and the CPS caseworker who'd filed the complaint. Financial transactions linking Marcus to Judge Patterson's campaign fund. A paper trail of corruption that turned the hearing into something else entirely. The courtroom erupted. Patterson was shouting about contempt. Marcus was on his feet, his mask of civility finally cracking. You have no idea what you've just done, he snarled at Kimberly, loud enough for everyone to hear. No idea. The doors opened. FBI agents filed in, and with them came Milo, carrying a folder thick with documentation. Your Honor, the lead agent said, we need to submit evidence relevant to this case. Milo took the stand and laid it all out. 18 months of cooperation with federal prosecutors. Names, dates, transactions, helping to dismantle organized crime networks throughout the city. His testimony was unflinching, owning every terrible thing he'd done, while also showing the years of work to make amends. I've done terrible things, I've hurt people, but for 5 years, I've been trying to make it right. Emma's Table and my other restaurants employ 73 people, former criminals trying to go straight, just like me. He looked directly at Judge Patterson. Don't punish Kimberly and Gemma for my past. They're innocent. The hearing was adjourned for evidence review. In the parking garage afterward, Marcus made his last desperate move. His men grabbed Kimberly and Gemma as they headed for their car. Marcus held Gemma, a gun visible in his jacket, FBI agents materializing from shadows. Let her go, Marcus, Milo said, his voice deadly calm. Take me instead. But Gemma, 6 years old and braver than anyone expected, kicked Marcus hard in the shin and broke free, running to her mother's arms. FBI agents swarmed in, and Marcus went down in handcuffs, screaming threats that would only add years to his sentence. That evening, back at Emma's Table, the staff had prepared a celebration. The charges had been dropped. Judge Patterson was under investigation. Marcus was in federal custody. They'd survived. The cake was elaborate, decorated with 6 candles just like Milo had promised weeks ago. Gemma closed her eyes and made her wish, then looked up at Milo with that innocent wisdom children sometimes possess. "I wish Mr. Milo could meet my sister Emma. I think they would be best friends." Milo went very still. "Your sister?" Gemma held up her doll, the one Marcus had given her, which she'd renamed and adopted as family. "Emma. She's my sister now. I talk to her about everything." The man who had survived 15 years of grief and violence, who had built an empire on pain and was trying to transform it into something good, finally broke. Tears ran down his face as he knelt beside this little girl who had unknowingly given him the greatest gift imaginable. Proof that maybe Emma had sent him Kimberly and Gemma, a chance at redemption he'd stopped believing he deserved. Kimberly took his hand, showing him that healing was possible, that the past didn't have to define the future. 1 year later, Kimberly and Gemma walked into the same upscale bakery where it had all begun. They were different people now, confident, stable, transformed by the knowledge that they deserved to take up space in the world. The staff didn't recognize them until Kimberly reminded them with quiet dignity who they were. A struggling mother entered with her young son, whispering the same desperate question about expired cake. Kimberly didn't hesitate. She bought the woman an elaborate cake and pressed a business card into her hand. "Emma's table. We're hiring. Come by tomorrow morning." The cycle of redemption continued. Gemma now ran a mentorship program at the restaurant, teaching children from shelters that their circumstances didn't define their worth. Milo's criminal empire had been completely transformed into a network of second-chance businesses, employing hundreds of people trying to rebuild their lives. Even Detective Chen had made peace, attending Gemma's 7th birthday at the restaurant, finally acknowledging that justice wasn't always about punishment. Sometimes it was about transformation. Emma's table now hosted an annual tradition: birthday celebrations for children from shelters, every cake whole and perfect, every candle lit with hope, every child learning they deserved more than scraps. Sometimes the most dangerous people can become the most powerful forces for change. And sometimes all it takes is one 6-year-old girl asking for expired cake to remind us that everyone deserves a second chance.